A well-known institution in the church turns 90 years old today. Opus Dei is Latin for Work of God. It was founded in 1928 by St. Josemaria Escriva in Madrid, Spain. The group encourages people to pursue holiness in their everyday lives. It has nearly 94,000 members worldwide. The majority are lay people. Joining us from Rome is Father John Wauck, a member of Opus Dei. He teaches at Rome's Holy Cross University, which is entrusted to Opus Dei. Father, on this 90th anniversary, describe Opus Dei for us. Tell us what members do.
Well, Opus Dei is a prelature of the Catholic Church, and basically the inspiration behind it is the idea that everyone is called to holiness, including ordinary lay Catholics, and that holiness can be pursued in the middle of the world. The inspiration behind it comes from the book of Genesis, the idea that God put Adam in the garden in order to work, and that was the original vocation of man. And then when God became man in Jesus Christ, he spent most of his life in Nazareth working. And in Opus Dei, we're encouraged to imitate that hidden life of Christ, trying to be children of God in the middle of our ordinary daily activities.
Well, St. Josemaria Escriva's approach aimed to transform families, jobs, lives. How do you live this out in your daily life, and how do you pass on the saint's message to students?
St. Josemaria Escriva said that we're called to be contemplatives in the middle of the world. The vocation of Opus Dei was to be a contemplative in the middle of ordinary daily life, in the middle of the street. And in order to do that, of course, you need to have a very strong life of prayer. If you want to be transforming the world, you have to be transformed yourself first. And that comes from a life of prayer, a Eucharistic life, devotion to the Mass, closeness with Our Lady. All of those elements of prayer, the Rosary, the Mass, are crucial foundation stones, really, for the life of the members of Opus Dei. That's what allows them to live as children of God in their family life, in their office, in their work, among their friends. It depends on having a strong interior life.
Most members of Opus Dei are lay people. At this moment, especially during this crisis, many are calling for a greater role for lay people in the church. What role should lay people play in your view?
St. Josemaria was St. Josemaria was ahead of his time, I would say, talking about the dangers of clericalism. He saw that as a real threat to the life of the church, where the church was seen as being above all the clergy, as opposed to being the entire people of God, and that every single Christian, by the virtue of being baptized, had a vocation to be a saint and an apostle. And that put a lot of responsibility, right, on the back of the lay people in the eyes of St. Josemaria, that we really have to take that calling seriously. And that means, and obviously in the life of the church, sometimes stepping up to the plate, right, in the life of the church and the governance of the church as well. There should be plenty of room for lay people to exercise their vocation in the life of the church. As I say, above all, the laity's vocation is to sanctify their ordinary life, but that doesn't mean that they should be left out of the governance of the church.
Pope St. John Paul II canonized St. Josemaria in 2002, called him the saint of ordinary life. What did he mean? What do you want our viewers to know about him?
Well, when St. John Paul II talked about St. Josemaria as the saint of ordinary life, I think he's referring to this idea that's so central to the teaching of St. Josemaria, that the Christian vocation within Opus Dei certainly is to try to transform the prose of every day into heroic verse. What he meant by that, obviously referring to heroic verse, is living the virtues heroically, which is the definition of sanctity. And we can transform the ordinary stuff of daily life, the prose of daily life, into a beautiful poem, a poem that gives glory to God. And that's what a holy life really is. And along with that holiness is also the apostolate that springs naturally from a life in deep connection with God. If we're aware of our own filiation, that we are children of God, it's going to naturally overflow in our dealings with other people, and we're going to help them become aware that they too are children of God.
Well, it's so interesting to hear about the lessons from St. Josemaria and more about Opus Dei as well. Father John Wauck, priest of Opus Dei, thanks so much for talking with us.
Thanks a lot.